Hello everyone. Thank you for letting us come into your home again today. Today we're bringing you number 7 of our series of shows, Happy Birthday Millcreek Township. We're 200 years old. We were incorporated in 1803, and obviously this is 2003. And folks, I know if you have seen the first 7 shows, then you know the kind of format that we were trying to bring to you. People that were former employees of the township, people in our fire departments. Today, my special guest was never an employee of Millcreek Township government. But as we began these series of shows, the planning for them, I can't tell you how many people have mentioned this gentleman's name to me. And they said, oh, you've got to have him on the show because he can tell you everything about the Kearsarge area. And of course, we've tried to bring, and if you haven't seen him yet, we will bring a show to you all about how West Millcreek was in the 1800s and when it started its growth period, and then also in the Bow Valley area. Well, today, this gentleman is going to tell you about what Kearsarge area was like, and I wonder if how many of you know that that area wasn't even known as Kearsarge. But you've got you curious now, so first of all, let me introduce you to my guest today, Mr. Donald Steva, and may I call you Don, please?
Okay.
Thank you very much. And Don, it's so nice to have you here. I was just telling Don before we went on camera, and you know a lot of times, folks, I'll give you a little background information of how we do these shows and why we do them and so forth. And I was just telling Dawn, this particular series, we have asked each one of our guests to come in ahead of time and kind of do a little interview with them because we wanted, for instance, I'm not familiar with what Kearsarge was like years and years ago, but Dawn's family were one of the first settlers. Can I say that, Dawn?
Well,
that's pretty clear, isn't it?
They settled, but not the first.
Not the first, but that's why all of these people, darn, so many people were telling me about you, and I'd never met them before, folks, so maybe you think we've known each other a long time, but we're getting to know each other, right, Don?
Right, oh, yeah.
Okay, now, let's tell the folks, first of all, a little bit about your own personal background. Mm-hmm. Am I safe in assuming that you were born and raised in Kearsarge area?
That's correct, Rosanne.
And how did you, now I know for a lot of people, and I've also heard this, Steva. Oh, that's Steva Welding up in Kearsarge.
Right.
I have to ask, is there still a Steva Welding in Kearsarge?
No, there's not. The business was sold to employees, and they're operating in the Waterford area now.
Oh,
but the building's vacant and for sale through Baldwin Brothers.
How did you happen, because I introduced you, before I even had the folks say hello to you, as a historian. Tell us how you got to be interested, because I have to tell you, Don, you know all of these things, and I'm assuming a lot of it you got from your family, but were you always interested in the history per se?
Well, my ancestors on both sides were immigrants from Germany, and they settled in the Kearsarge area very early after arriving in America. So I've heard stories about Kearsarge all my life. And I'm the 4th generation with deep roots in Kearsarge. So I'm very happy to tell folks about what I know. A lot of it is hearsay. Many of the dates may be plus or minus what I might mention. But yes, I was born in Kearsarge. My great-grandfather, Steva, immigrated from northern Germany as a young lad of 17 with 8 other people. They had tickets for Chicago. They got as far as Erie, worked with the railroad, were never paid. So without any money, Heinrich Steva started working at one of the local Summit Township farms. There he got acquainted with the farmer's daughter.
Uh-oh.
They started their family in Summit. And one of their children, George M. Steva, my grandfather, homesteaded in Nebraska for a while, returned to the Kearsarge area, learned the blacksmith trade, and started a blacksmith and wagon building shop in Kearsarge, built a home across the street at 5630 Peach. And then his son, my father, was also a blacksmith, and he worked for the Acoma Milk Company for many years and lived on Bible Avenue, where I was born. And my family grew up on West 51st Street near the James S. Wilson School, where my son Patrick still lives. So we have 4 generations that
Oh, that's great.
have deep roots in the Kearsarge area.
And you've seen it grow too, haven't you?
On my mother's side, if I may
Sure,
continue,
go ahead. But we got to give the mother equal billing here.
immigrated from southern Germany near Heilbronn. And they came here in about 1890 with 5 children, settled on a small tenant farm along Peach Street around 5500 Peach. Then they they moved to a larger farm, which is now Winchester Heights, where they had 10 more children. My mother was a middle child of 15 children. So those Stevas and Wursts knew each other and attended school together and started our family.
Well, now, folks, Don has brought some pictures with him. And before we start showing, and he'll identify all these pictures, but how did, it wasn't always Kearsarge. What was Kearsarge called in the beginning?
Well, it's not well known, but Seth Reed left New England with his wife Hannah, stayed overnight on the peninsula after a sailboat trip from Buffalo. The next day they went into Erie and they started building the first hotel. Then a year or so later they took a wilderness trail 4 miles south to the Kearsarge Valley, to a confluence of the Beaver Run and Walnut Creek, cleared some land, started a small farm. Their child was Charles, and he had that farm for a while. He married a girl named Rachel Miller. Their first child was the first girl born in Erie County. So the family of Reed was very well known in Erie, but also in Kearsarge. A later generation, a young girl at 15 spent time there. Her name was Sarah Reed. She later in Erie founded the Sarah Reed Retirement Home, which is still in operation today.
Well, Don, how did Kearsarge get to be Kearsarge? Because it wasn't called that in the beginning, you told me.
It was known as Walnut Creek for almost 80 years. In a later date, 1870, George Bible and his brother moved to the Kearsarge Valley and built a general store.
Okay, now hold up, because you brought me pictures. And folks, I'm telling you, Don is just a dictionary full of things. But the first thing, we want to start showing you some of these pictures. Now, Don, these are your pictures, so you know what they are. This is called the Reed School. Now, that has to do with the family that you were just talking about, the Reeds.
Yes.
And this was the first school?
It's the first brick school. It replaced a wooden school that was on the same site for many years. This school was the first brick school in Erie County, and my parents attended that school through 8 grades. Part of the schoolyard was shared by the Bible brothers, who had a large general store in that area.
Okay, now I want to hold up on that, because we've got a picture of that. But didn't you tell me that this school, where this school was, is where the Greyhound bus terminal is today, so people can kind of identify the area?
That's true, Roseanne. That is in the area just south of the Cadillac Auto Agency today. And you can see a railroad running in front of the school.
Yeah. Okay, let me go on now, because you brought me another picture, and this was the first multi-room school in Erie County, you told me.
That's true. First 4-room, multi-room school in Erie County, a school that I attended up through 8th grades.
Where was this one, Don?
That's located at the same site as the Reed School, which is now the Greyhound bus station area. Just a few doors south of the Cadillac Agency on Peach Street.
This has got 2 floors on it, this school. And this looks like it's brick, and oh folks, wait to hear about the bricks, how they manufactured bricks in this area. But this looks kind of like a school today.
Yes, originally it was the 4 rooms, and later had 2 additions on the south to accommodate the growing population in Kearsarge during the 30s.
Okay, now another one that I have, and this date is 1870, and this was a George Bible general store. That's the one you were just talking about, right?
Yes, that was the first general store in the Kearsarge area. It was a Walmart. It was a
Did they have Walmart then?
It was the Sam's Club, and it was the Nick Scott all in one. They had a horse sheds, a hotel, a saloon, a general store, an implement business. They sold the first Chevrolets and Studebaker cars. They had a blacksmith shop, a windmill, just a number of things.
This family then, this Bible family, they had to be like your family then, right? I mean, really homesteaders, early homesteaders in that
they
area?
were neighbors with the Steva and Wurst. And the descendant of the Bible family is our own Monsignor William Bible at St. Peter's Church in Erie. Oh,
for heaven's sakes. Now, finally, we're getting to one from your family, and this says the George M. Steva Black Ships, and this is in 1900. Folks, look at this one. Now, this is Dawn's family.
Yes, the gabled 2-story building was grandfather George M. Steva blacksmith shop at 5630 Peach Street, and the building on the left is a competitor of the Bible general store, that was a Bill Stoker general store. Granddad would take care of the farmers' horses, their wagons, and he had a gas well, operated woodworking machinery, and was the village blacksmith, the 4th village blacksmith in Kearsarge.
What was that other family that you said that was next to the Bible store? Stoker?
Well, there was a blacksmith shop at the Bible complex, and prior to that was Amos Schleybaugh had a blacksmith shop along Walnut Creek that was washed away one time during the flood.
This was another picture. Now, folks, now you can understand that some of these pictures aren't of the same quality, but this one, your grandfather, Don, really was an what do you call him? I want to say, what's the word I want? Help me here. Where he has a lot of, that's it. Did you ever get tongue-tied over that, folks?
Not quite.
Oh my gosh, but look at all, folks, let me read what you are and then I'll turn this around. And I love these cars, Don, that they have, and I don't know what year that car is or if it's a little bus, but there's this, now he's into auto repairing, obviously the blacksmith is not as much, but now tell the folks what else he's got on there, and that's why I said that about him.
The gabled building on the left, as we said, was the blacksmith shop, and after Granddad retired, he built the covered gas station on the right, where he sold gasoline, the first operating gas service station in the Kearsarge area. And in between was a self-service drive-in where Grandmother Steva had.
Folks, can you imagine, what was that, what year is this, do you suppose,
well, around 1900 and early 20s.
A drive-in, God love him. What else is on there, Don?
And he had auto inspection. He had a electric dynamo and generated his own electricity. There was a gas well.
Look at the gas pumps, folks.
There was a water well that he served both sides of the street. His home was on the east side. This is 5630 Peach Street in Kearsarge.
Now, where's 5600 today? What's
well,
there?
That building was removed, and it's the north entrance to the Millcreek Mall.
Oh, okay.
Called Cafaro Drive.
I love this drive-in. I just thought that was great.
And
he wasn't
the home,
up and...
the home, you may have a picture of that. On the other side of the street, grandmother had tourists. She was one of the first tourist home operations in that area. And in the early days, the road was not paved. And they put stones and boards across between the blacksmith shop and his home, so they wouldn't have to walk through and track mud into the house. And we heard that when hucksters came down from Summit on Saturday morning with all their produce to be sold at Erie, they would hit the speed bump and produce would flow out of the back of the wagon, and Dad would have some fresh vegetables on Sunday morning.
Oh, didn't they know they lost them, do you suppose, when they came down, or they were in just a hurry?
He didn't tell them.
That's cute. Folks, this other picture, and we have, during the other shows that we've had on for this here series, we've shown you some other pictures of folks. Now, most of these pictures we just showed you didn't have any folks in them that up close that you could see. You know, one of the things, Don, that really makes me chuckle, when I see these old-time pictures, nobody smiled in these pictures. Now, folks, Don's going to tell you about this one, and you'll see what I mean. Nobody, they all wore hats, but nobody was smiling.
Sure.
They didn't look too happy.
Yeah.
Tell folks what this is a picture of, Don.
That was part of the Bible Brothers complex, the hotel saloon. The top of the photo, when we look closely, it says Walnut Creek Hotel. Before Kearsarge received its new name, it was called Walnut Creek. All of these folks are well dressed. There must have been some special event at that time. They have musical instruments, bass violin, violins, and they're all dressed for some special event, which was not mentioned, and I do not know.
You know what kind of tickled me too? Is all the ladies are in the back.
Yes.
If you look real close, folks, you'll be able to see that. Aren't they, Don? They're all in the back.
Well,
do you suppose
they
those
probably
are the
weren't allowed in the saloon.
Do you suppose, oh, I was just thought maybe they were waitresses in the saloon, you know, that, but not as a guest. But it's just the fact that nobody smiles in these pictures. That must have been the way they wanted to take them back then. It can't be that they were all angry, but they sure look like they are. But at any rate, okay.
A comical thing about that
what else did
saloon,
you think?
there was a little Irishman with blue eyes and a jolly features. He would take his metal bucket to the saloon. Prior to that, he would take butter and rub it around the inside of the container, walk into the saloon, and then they would fill it with beer. So this butter kept the foam from rising. He would get more beer for his money.
Where did that story come from?
It may have been true.
That's cute. Well, folks, I'll bet you there's some of you sitting out here that are watching this show today, and you've heard some of these stories yourself, and I'll bet you that when you see this show that Don is our guest today, next time you see him, you'll be trading stories again, Don. What do you think?
Well, it's possible. I love to talk history. The little I know about it, I love to talk.
You know, that was one of the questions, and I'm sorry, I don't remember whether you asked. I asked you in the beginning, how did you get the bug to be a historian? I mean, was that something you liked in school, history, or because you've done a lot of work on this? Folks, he's also written a couple of, what did you tell me, they were books or
There are 4 short histories of Kearsarge. Mrs. Hannibal Spires, and Mrs. Weaver, Bible Weaver, My niece Paula Butterfield wrote one in school, and the latest one, Heather McIntosh, wrote a 54-page history of Kearsarge. And any of those that anyone's interested in, I'd be glad to give them a copy.
Oh, that's great. What years did they cover? I mean, how close to present day did they come, or were they more in the background?
Heather's was written in 1993.
Oh, okay. Was that the latest one, the most current?
That's the latest one, in which she describes the great changes in the village and to the retail market that it is now.
Village, is that what you, I heard you just say village, is that what you called it?
Yes, it had no particular government other than Millcreek Township. One constable, Mr. Steinfurth, took care of any of those legal matters at that time. But other than that, there was no formal government at all. It was just a group of people that worked together and lived together.
Folks, I'm not doing it on this show today, but on some of the other shows to do with the history of Millcreek Township, I've shown you some of the journals that from 1835 that are upstairs in our township safe. And Dawn, you can understand this. They've got to keep, the government has to keep all the journals to do with the history. And when I started going through those things, and I certainly would never refer to myself as a historian, I'm kind of into it though now. You know, I was not born, raised, or schooled here in Millcreek, but it was so fascinating. And I came across this Walnut Creek all the time, and they were talking about the plank roads. Now, is that what they were referring to, is the planks they put across?
That's true. From the Kearsarge area south to Waterford was one plank road, and then another from Kearsarge to Edinburgh was another plank road. Those were toll roads at one time.
Toll roads?
Yes. At Peach and Walnut Creek in Kearsarge, there was a large pole that swung from a post operated by a woman and charged 2 cents as a toll road.
Oh my heavens.
To go onto Waterford over the Corduroy Road.
If somebody is watching our show, Dawn, and they don't know, we keep saying Walnut Creek. Where would Walnut Creek, or where is it today in today's world, so we could identify where it is?
Walnut Creek crosses Peach Street at the north corner of the Millcreek Mall.
Oh, okay.
It follows the east boundary of the Millcreek Mall to Zimmerly Road, then takes a 90-degree turn west and follows the ridge as far as Manchester, where it finds a cut through the ridge and flows into Lake Erie at Manchester and Walnut Creek.
So if people are trying to visualize, because you keep talking about what Waterford, and it would be if you were heading south on Peach Street, it would be where you would like take the first turn off into the mall.
Yeah, they call it Interchange Road now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Interchange Road leads over to I-79, and it leads to the Edinburgh Road. You go straight up 19, that's the Waterford Road. That was a Waterford plank road in the early days.
And where was the toll arm that you had? There wasn't a bridge, you said, but where was that now?
It was Kuntz Road, Kuntz and Peach.
And it was 2 cents.
2 cents.
Was the road, one of the things that I kept wondering was the road just wide enough for like a horse and a buggy to get through before they had the cars, or did they make it wide enough?
Yes.
How'd they do that, Don?
Well, the first pavement was 8 feet wide macadam from Erie to Interchange or Walnut Creek. My father, as a young boy, carried water to the workers while they were building that road, and he helped bump the cars to have the slag move down through the car onto the road.
Now wait a minute. I was with you where you said your father carried water. What did you mean by bumping the cars?
Well, the cars came through Kearsarge on the railroad that was evident at that time, and the gondola cars had trapdoors in the bottom those doors were opened and the slag would fall out onto the road.
Oh, okay.
And some of it would lodge in the corners. He would bump them with a log. He carried water for $1.25 a day when he was 12 years old. One hot July day, with his water bucket, he sat down beside the edge of the road. Next day, he couldn't go to work.
Why?
He sat into a bunch of poison ivy.
Oh, dear.
That was in his job.
Oh. Well, anybody out there that's had similar problems, you know what he's referring. You hear what Don is not saying here. Don, one of the other fascinating things, he brought a picture, folks, of a ship. And when I was saying, you know, where did the name Kearsarge come? Because I haven't heard you say anything yet about a family really named Kearsarge. I would have expected it to say Steva or Bible or even Reed, but you didn't. You said Kearsarge. So me being me, folks, I had to ask. And so he brought this to us. Now, there's a story with this too, Don.
Yeah.
Tell the folks what this one's about.
Well, I like to think of it as the second most important battle in the Civil War, naval battle in the Civil War. This ship was commissioned at Portsmouth, New Hampshire Naval Yard in 1862. It was christened by Mrs. McFarland, the editor's wife, and they commissioned at Kearsarge. In northern New Hampshire, in the White Mountains, there's a mountain that the Indians, the Algonquin Indians, called Kearsarge, Pointed Mountain. So she took that name and spelled it Kearsarge, and in 1862, this ship was built and commissioned to seek out the Confederate naval vessel and destroy her, because the Confederate Alabama had sunk over 50 ships, Union ships, during the Civil War. The boat found the Alabama off the coast of France at Cherbourg, and one Sunday morning the two had a 15-minute battle, and oddly enough, the captains of each ship had been roommates at Annapolis.
Oh my heavens. Wonder how they felt shooting each other.
Captain Siemens of the Alabama and Captain Winslow of the Kearsarge. The Kearsarge, with superior gunnery and fresh powder and a new ship, sank the Warren Alabama in a 15-minute battle. And this battle is now pictured on a huge mural in the Philadelphia Art Museum, done by Edward Monet. He sketched it when he was a young lad. Many people were along the shoreline watching the battle. He was out there in a little rowboat sketching the battle, and he later made this huge painting.
Oh my, did you ever see it in person?
Yes, I saw it.
You kind of talked like you see it and really described it.
So later on, as we had earlier mentioned, the Bible brothers, legend has it that Philip Bible served aboard this ship. And in 1872, Mr. Bible wanted to have a post office in his general store. And they submitted the name Kearsarge to Washington. It was accepted. On December 21st, 1872, the little valley town of Walnut Creek became Kearsarge. It became Kearsarge ever since. It appears on the Rand McNally map, the AAA map, and if you look closely, there are 2 or 3 places in Kearsarge where the name still appears. Of course, the Kearsarge Fire Department, and the Kearsarge Rotary Club, and the Kearsarge Interchange, folks, and the Kearsarge Auto Parts.
Don, do you suppose that the reason that Mr. Bible submitted the name Kearsarge for his post office was because there was a lot of, and if I say publicity, obviously, folks, it's not like it is today, but it was, everybody was excited about this Kearsarge ship, you know, sinking the Alabama, and so that maybe that's why, I mean, we're trying to read the poor man's mind, and he's gone, But was that be why there was a lot of excitement about it?
Well, the battle took place in July 19th, 1864, which was quite a few years prior to the request for that name. That would have been 64 to 72.
Well, and if there was a relative.
But they thought that in memory of Philip Bible, who served on the ship, they would suggest that name.
Well, there you go, folks. I don't know if you're living in Kearsarge or not, but if you are, that's how you got your name, because it wasn't always that way. Now, another one, and you had mentioned this, Dawn, when you first started sharing with the folks about the Bible. They were Bible brothers, obviously.
Yes.
Was there two of them or more?
Well, it was George and Philip that I know of, but it was always called the Bible Brothers.
Okay, and this is a picture, and you were talking about them selling new cars.
Yes.
And where the trolley went by. Obviously,
Yes.
it's a little easier maybe to see these tracks in this picture, folks, than it was in one of the other pictures. Okay, well.
Well, the tracks
See the tracks there, Dan?
were used with the horse-drawn stage from Erie to Edinburgh. The students were transported on the stage. Later in 1905, it was converted to electricity from Edinburgh to Erie, and also from Erie to Cambridge Springs. They
Can you see
ran
that?
right down the middle of the Kearsarge village in front of the Bible Brothers store on the right and the Hershey Hotel on the left. Those cars would indicate that this picture must have been in the early 1900s.
Dawn, you
They
said
sold Chevrolets and Studebaker cars at the Bible Brothers complex.
Dawn, did I understand you correctly to say that those tracks like that were used by a horse pulling? Tell me about it, or did I not hear you right?
Yes,
Why would you need tracks?
That's what I read earlier, that there was a horse-drawn stage using those tracks in the beginning, in the late 1800s.
Well, there you go, folks. You're here now. Now, wait till you hear about this. When Dawn brought this picture in, and here again, these people certainly are not, they look kind of mean looking, Dawn. Of course, I realize they're working. Folks, this is a picture of a brickyard. And the first thing, when Dawn told me, you said 4 different companies? And I wanted to know how come we had so many companies and where they were.
From what I've learned, there were 4 different locations of brickyard industry in the Kearsarge Valley. The first that was recorded was on Zimmerly Road, which would be the very northwest corner of the Millcreek Mall as we know it today. Then the second one was where the Millcreek Mall Pavilion is located today. The third one was located on Peach Street around 5500 Peach, and this one shown was on an area located at 54th and Washington, which is now Winchester Heights development. This is the yard that my grandfather helped tend to the boilers when they were firing bricks that were sold to many contractors in Erie. In particular, the most notable was St. John's Lutheran Church on Peach Street, was made from bricks from the Zimmerly yard. And the wages were $1.25 a day, working 10 hours.
$1.25. Okay, I guess I was going to show how dumb I am about making bricks. I don't know about you folks, maybe you know what it takes. What was in the ground, what material was in the ground that you had all these brick companies?
Well, an area in Winchester Heights along Spring Valley Drive, there were 2 large excavations, and they formed ponds that we children used as skating ponds in the wintertime. There was a deposit of fine high-grade blue clay, a very fine grade blue clay, that when fired, it turned to the red color that we know in the earlier bricks.
I wonder if there's any of that around here today.
Well, that area that I spoke of, Spring Valley Drive, has all been covered with topsoil, but I don't know of any blue clay that I know of today.
Here's another picture, folks. Don't you just love these pictures? I'm so glad you brought these, Don, because it makes it so much more interesting if you can see pictures as you're talking about. Now this one, and you forgive me for reading this a little bit, folks. This says William Stoker General Store 1900. Where was this one in comparison to wherever today that we can identify it?
This William Stoker General Store was a competitor of the Bible Brothers, who were just a half block south on Peach Street. This store was an adjacent property to my grandfather's blacksmith shop, and William Stoker sold feed. He also had a gas station later. He had a dance hall upstairs that the community used, and it was a later store that we used when we moved on to Peach Street, a grocery store.
When you said that I'm going to go back, I forgot to ask you that Bible Brothers wanted the post office, and that's how they submitted the name Kearsarge.
That's correct.
Was that the first post office that you had in the Kearsarge area?
Yes, the post office was in operation for a few years until the rural free delivery system came through in about 1903, and then the post office was closed.
Okay, now folks, wait till you see this. And this is a newspaper clipping, so it's not going to be as clear as some of the other, but this is fascinating. This is your father, or your father built old fire trucks.
Yes.
Folks, I hope you can see this. Dan, our technician, said that he could get this, and it's kind of hard to hold this still. It's kind of flimsy. It looks like I'm kind of nervous doing this, but I'm really not. Explain this, Don, to the folks, if this isn't something.
Well, the Kearsarge Fire Department was once called the Kearsarge Hose Company. A group of volunteers applied for a loan to help build this truck, and they went to the bank, and the clerk says, "What do you make, women's stockings?"
Oh, I bet they like that one.
At that point, they changed the name to Kearsarge Fire Department. This truck was a chassis from a used Furch baking truck that one of the members was able to provide, and the volunteers built all the hardware, the tank, the hose reel. In 1939, Kearsarge was chartered as the Kearsarge Fire Department. There's Mr. Bartholomew on the left.
I was going to ask you if you recognize this. It's hard for you to see this.
The second man from the left, Clive Lyons, was the first fire chief. The gentleman at the wheel is George M. Steva, my grandfather. And then the constable was Frank Steinfurth in the white shirt.
With the tie?
Oh, with the cap.
Oh, okay, I see him.
And then was Bill Stoker, who operated the general store, and another volunteer, John Melzer. This was used to replace some small hand extinguishers, one of which is on the running board. My grandfather had earlier purchased those 2.5-gallon fire extinguishers for the people in the neighborhood. When the fire bell rang, the group of people would gather these by hand and run to the fire and attempt to extinguish the fires. Later on, they had a 40-gallon soda acid extinguisher on two wagon wheels that they pulled
Let me put this down as Dawn's talking about this, folks. Now tell them about this, Dawn.
That's the first official equipment of the Kearsarge Hose Company. Hand-drawn 40-gallon soda acid fire extinguisher that Granddad attended over 46 fires while he was interested
Now
in.
this one was before the truck?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And they used it at the same time, too.
I understand, but before they built the truck, they used this thing.
That's true.
What kind of chemicals were in there?
Well, it was water and bicarbonate of soda solution, and on the top was a large glass container of sulfuric acid. When the large tank was inverted, sulfuric acid would mix with the bicarbonate soda solution and create pressure to extinguish the fire through the hose.
Did other fire companies, and I know if you're talking 39, I think the first fire company here in Millcreek, and folks, don't holler at me if I get the year wrong because I don't have it in front of me. I think it was 37, was Westlake Fire Department, was the first fire department in the township. Did they use these things too, do you think?
I don't know, Rosanne, much about the other companies, but I do imagine they started around the same time.
What did the people of your area do, Don, when they had a fire? I hear you say somebody had a siren or something, and then people just all came from their homes and businesses? Is that how they did that?
Later on there was a siren during the 30s, but prior to that, I do not know how the alarm was sounded other than just by
Don't you wonder
yelling.
Sometimes how in the world they ever did that, folks? I mean, we're so used today of having all the advantages and the easy things to use that you wonder how those people, God love them, they were hardy folk. Now this one, and this is our last picture for you folks. This one is Steva's Welding Company, and Dawn had some really interesting things. It was your dad or your grandfather? Or both?
That's true. Grandfather George, as I had shown earlier, retired from the blacksmith shop. My dad and I started a welding business in the old blacksmith shop. And
did your grandfather kind of keep an eye on it?
Well, he had died in 1943. And when I was discharged from the service, Dad and I started a welding business in his old blacksmith shop at 5630 Peach Street. And at that location, we did mostly repair work and some fabricating. Later on, we built a larger building at 5702 Peach where we had fabricating. And one of the items that we made were for the volunteer companies, the homemade fire trucks. Kearsarge had 2, McCain had 2. We built one for Sugar Grove and Union City because the equipment was difficult to obtain by the fire companies after World War II.
Now, how long were you in the business, did you say?
Well, our company started in 1945, and we operated for 40 years up until 1988.
In the same place where your grandfather started?
No, we moved to a location 5702 Peach Street. The building still stands. It's across the street from Cadillac office.
Oh, okay. That's about, isn't there kind of a Chinese place or something around there too?
Yes. Yeah, Bible Avenue and Peach Street is the location of the building that we had when we operated the welding shop.
One of the other things that I found very interesting, and Don was kind enough to let me see one of the booklets that he had composed, and it had to do with the location of the Millcreek Mall, which used to be known as...
Well, it was a farm farmland. In the beginning, there was an owner, pioneer landowner by the name of David McNair, had over 800 acres in the Kearsarge Valley, part of which is now the Millcreek Mall. He sold 225 acres to Hannibal Spires for $150 worth of gold and silver coins.
Oh my goodness.
Then that area was farmed by Hannibal Spires, and he had a livestock business. Then later on, when he retired, it became the Erie County Airport, where private planes were using the airport. 2 hangars were built, and there are special events such as Oral Roberts and the Ringling Brothers Circus.
I remember in your
joined the area.
What you wrote, and you were it was talking about Oral Roberts flew into that airport in a pink airplane.
Pink and white. And
had a tent there, and that's where he had his evangelist meetings,
yes.
right? Mm-hmm. And then the circus was there.
The circus...
That's Ringling Brothers, right?
The circus set up their tents, well, let's see, would be the early 70s. One of the last outdoor circus performance was held at the circus field, the Spires property, and then they moved to Mercer, PA, and a large hailstorm and windstorm blew the tent, and they did not have any outdoor performance after that.
Oh dear.
Mm-hmm.
Don, we've given them all kinds of history. These folks out here, and even folks if you don't live in the Kearsarge area, it's got to be because you travel up to the mall, and every time you go by up where they would go by that Greyhound bus station, mm-hmm. they're going to think about the schools that you talked about. And across from there, kind of across from there, is where Don's family, his grandfather, and then you started out in the same building with your dad, you told me, for
yes.
Steva's Welding, and then you moved someplace else. Folks, you certainly have been on a history tour of Kearsarge. Is there anything else, Dawn, that you can think of that you would like this audience to know before we say goodbye? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, I'm surprised at the changes in the area, particularly south.
I'll bet you are, yeah.
Of Kearsarge. Between Erie and I-90, there's a retail complex unlike anything I've seen anywhere else in our travels. And it continues to grow. And I was just wondering if the ancestors could return today and see the changes that they would not believe what has happened. But
it was their ingenuity, first their interest, their strength of character, and physical strength they had to have. Mm-hmm. I mean, they didn't have all these things like we have today. Yes. Pioneer people, and they really were pioneer people. Right. And if it wasn't for them, Dawn, we wouldn't have, no matter whether we're talking Kearsarge or West Millcreek or Bell Valley or wherever, so we certainly owe an awful lot to them, but it makes it nice when it's family. See, now I don't have any family out in this area, so, but you can point to family members and say if it wasn't for them.
Well, I congratulate you and the township people on celebrating the 200th birthday of Millcreek Township, and you deserve to celebrate.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm real happy to be a
thank you, Don.
member of the township.
The supervisors for several months have wanted to do something as a celebration of our 200 years. And obviously with the tax increase we had this year, and folks, you don't need me to tell you about it, they didn't have the funds. But I said to them, we have something better. We have a television, and folks, we're glad to announce to you that if you would like copies of these 12 different shows that you're going to be viewing or have had a chance to view of our Happy Birthday Millcreek Township, just call me at my office because we've been able to arrange with a local supplier the cost. And I want to make sure I get this figure correct. And wouldn't you know, Don, I don't have it here in front of me. But let me put it to you this way, folks. For all 12 shows, it's $39.95 plus tax. Call me for information, but you would just need to make the check out to whomever the company is I'm going to tell you about, and you would get all 12 copies. And you can understand how we just can't do number 7 copy, which is Dawn's copy, or number 2 copy if you have a friend there. We're going to have you take all 12 copies. But that was one thing, Dawn. We supervisors thought, you know, granted we're going to be running them on, we'll run them, for instance, now you will lead off with the second 6. We can run 6 shows at a time because of the equipment that we have. And folks that are regular viewers, you know that, folks. We change, and we have 6 different shows and change every week. Well, we're going to run the first 6 of this series, and then the next week we will run starting off with your 6, and you will be the first one on that series. And we will be running them up until the end of the year, of course. So we'll give people a chance